Good morning, welcome. We will wait a couple of minutes before we start the event. Thank you for your patience.
Good morning. Let's wait for a couple of more minutes for other people to join. I see that the participants are still registering, so let's just wait for one more minute. Okay, let's start. Good morning. Thank you all for joining to have a coffee with us today. I am Gianina Găvănescu, Head of Legal and Compliance of CBRE Romania, and I will be your host for today. Joining us today are our colleagues from Dentons, and they will bring in thoughtful insight from a legal perspective. Perry and Bogdan, thank you for accepting our invitation and joining us. It's a true pleasure to have you here. The real estate perspective will be covered by us at CBRE Romania by Răzvan Iorgu, our MD, and Muler Onofrei, the Business Development Director of the Industrial Department. Some of you may know, given that we are all tired by Zooms, we have designed this event a bit differently. We want to encourage insightful conversations on challenging topics. We all know that in challenge, we find opportunities too. So this is what we aim to achieve today as well. And we have an interesting topic, structuring partnerships between developers and tenants. Let's see how this will go. And we truly encourage you to actively participate as well by raising any questions or comments in the chat sections. We really want to hear your voice. So let's start. For the opening, I would like our speakers to present themselves in 1 minute or two, if possible. What brings you here?
Okay, shall I start, Gianina?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Gianina. Thank you, Răzvan and Muler and CBRE for inviting us to this event. Really pleased to be able to participate. My name is Zizzi. I'm managing partner of Dentons in Romania. We are a firm that's been on the ground for nearly a quarter century. We have 35 attorneys in a full service firm with a particular strength in real estate. We have been involved in many of the major projects since at least 2004. And one of our strengths in particular is logistics and warehousing, which we're happy to speak about today. I myself have been on the ground since 2003 in Romania and work on matters throughout the region, including Poland, Czech Republic, Turkey, generally in all of CE and SE. Bogdan?
Yes, hi. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me as speaker to this very interesting event. As Perry mentioned, we are, I think we are in Romania for more than 20 years and quite active on logistics. We actually pioneered some landmark transactions, including, I would say, Prologis, Heitman, so the initial players, GE, working along Helios, Phoenix. So we were here when the first developments on logistics were developed in Romania, and we are continuing. I am the head of the real estate practice in Romania, and with specific focus on logistics and innovation. So I think that's why I might be fit for this discussion, for today's discussion. Thank you.
I'll continue, Gianina. So my name is Răzvan Iorgu. I'm with CBRE with the company for 20 years. I'm managing it for 10. It's almost scary when you start thinking about it. Related to industrial, the market took off in Romania after 2008, about 8 years ago, I think. We've been leading the market most of these years. Very recent transaction. We've closed the year with the prolongation of Carrefour in P3, 80,000 square meters. We started the year with the build-to-suit project for Corteva, 23,000. And we've done a very recent sale that will be public soon. Maybe we'll cover this topic in the call as well. But the thing I'm most proud of, it's worth mentioning, is that CBRE is a company that's growing talent. And if you look at our developer clients today, former colleagues are in top management position in each of them. And this makes me feel great.
Okay, I'll take over. My name is Muler Onofrei. I started alongside Mr. Răzvan Iorgu 20 years ago in this field, and then I migrated for a while. Talking like Bogdan said about the initial players, I've been involved with Prologis, and then Goodman, and then Panattoni, and more recently with I co-founded an industrial developer, Element Industrial. However, I found recently that it's a good idea to come back to consultancy, where it's a place where you can see everything from the top of the hill. So I'm happy to be here and joining this conversation. Gianina?
You're muted, Gianina.
Yes. I've done this so many times, but it still doesn't work, the technical issue. Okay, so my next question goes to Răzvan. 2020 was a record year for the industrial market, almost 1 million square meter leased in Romania. And this year started very good as well. And it appears that we will have a new record year for the industrial market. Răzvan, is it as good as it sounds? What companies are driving this demand?
It looks very promising, and it's not valid only for Romania. It's valid for the entire region. If you look at the take-up of 2020 compared to the previous year, in Hungary it went up 65%, in Poland 22%, in Romania 78%, in Slovakia 9%. The only country that dropped in terms of take-up was Czech with a 28% drop, but still from a very high number. So from 1 million square meters to 780. So a lot of companies are consolidating their position in the industrial sector and growing in terms of tenants as well. My favorite quote from myself for more than a year ago is that industrial is the Cinderella of the real estate market.
Yes.
And it's becoming, and it's getting true, yeah? It's becoming more and more attractive for investors. And it's obvious if you think about it, it doesn't happen by accident. Online, on one hand, is here to stay, and it's driving the market forward. But what I would like to point here is that it is also the closest thing the real estate market has to a pure financial product. Fewer tenants, generally longer holds, and that's why big money will continue to show interest in industrial. What's driving it forward? We talk a lot about nearshoring, at least in the last year since the pandemic. We talked a lot about nearshoring. We talk a lot about Amazon and so on. But in fact, the real demand comes from tenants that are here, when we're talking about Romania, that know the country and that grow, that expand their business here. This is what's driving it forward. And this is why asset management is crucial in industrial. Yeah, happy tenants extend their leases, continue to stay, and ensure your growth for years to come.
Thank you, Răzvan. And now that we have the real estate perspective, Peri, Bogdan, what about the legal side? What projects are you working on? How do you feel the market?
Bogdan?
I'm sympathetic with Răzvan, and also my bet on this is that 2021 will be a good year for logistics. There are what we see on the legal, let's say, as products for the legal market, acquisitions. Starting with land acquisition and acquisition of projects. There are a few, and there are a few also on the pipeline. Some financing, leases, of course, and here I would say industrial, and we are quite active on automotive. Automotive is an important sector for this, and it's a very stable lease because it's a long-term lease. Retail, we are working for some retail leases, both warehouses for their distribution to their various centers and stores. And here, maybe Peri, you can mention a very interesting concept that you just heard, which was the mixed project, logistics and retail.
Oh yes, I can't say too much about it, but I was speaking with a developer recently who is planning to launch kind of a combination warehouse and retail center, which is, I mean, I think you think of Metro when you hear that, but it's sort of more than that. It really is like a warehouse where you'd be shipping goods from, but at the same time, people could come in and pick them off the shelves. We can talk more about that later, Răzvan and Muler. But also an interesting twist to how this is, although not unsurprising, I think, is also warehouses kind of maybe move a little closer to the city center with urban logistics, which I knock on wood, we will see in Bucharest, because I think that it's the city with so much traffic that it merits more attention to last mile. But just one thing I wanted to mention, actually, and it's a project we're working on with CBRE, in fact, and it's one of my favorite projects. And the reason is that there is a company that's planning to make Romania their European headquarters. They were looking to buy an existing platform. This would be a kind of a massive manufacturing operation. And this is exactly, I think, the kind of thing that at this moment, with the economy doing relatively well compared to other European countries, a government in place that I think is arguably the best since the revolution. It's really the moment where investors are starting to look at Romania seriously and seeing that we're not going the path of authoritarianism like some of our neighbors. We are dedicated to a free market, center-right government. This kind of thing really attracts the kind of investment we want. And this particular project, if it does go through, and there are a lot of ifs, I think it is hopefully the future. Nearshoring from China, I agree. We've heard about it. We've heard of the Brexit dividend, but has it happened? I mean, according to your statistics, it hasn't yet. But I still hold out hope we'll get some of those dividends. But I would think, on its own, Romania at this moment is attractive enough for investors who've already gone to Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic. This is our moment in the sun, I think. Maybe I'm too optimistic, but this is my view.
No, it's very well that you are so optimistic, because it makes us as well. So for Muler, I have a question. I've looked at the data, and we apparently have a dynamic tenants market. We already have 5 million square meters of modern industrial stock delivered, and more than 600,000 under construction to be delivered at the end of this year. We all know about the west of the Bucharest. We all know about the west of the country. Are you betting on new industrial hubs in Romania?
The answer is yes, absolutely. Actually, if we look at what happened in the first quarter of this year, we've been seeing new developments, say roughly 61,000 square meters that were delivered in the Q1 2021. And 72% of these have been delivered in Timișoara and Cluj, so not Bucharest. I mean, Bucharest continues to be the most important. More than half of the stock is here. More than half of the future developments will take place in Bucharest. But it's very interesting to see this democratization of development, so to speak. So we also see new polls, new talks. For example, Constanța is standing on its feet. I mean, this is a relatively new development. We have a number of developers that have very interesting projects in the region. We have new interest for Bacău, something that was not on the map until now. Târgu Mureș is another very interesting location, Craiova. This is, of course, links strongly with the new infrastructure developments that are being planned and executed. I mean, going the same line as Perry, that this is Romanian's moment, where we deliver on our promises, on our true potential. I mean, if we look at the expressways that are being now executed, not only talked about in television shows. I mean, we see Craiova-Pitești, we see Bucharest-Alexandria as well. A0 is it's a game changer. I mean, if we look at this, A0 is the new ring road highway of Bucharest. Our bet is that this will change, like it happened in Warsaw as well. I mean, new infrastructure developments of this size and impact will basically change the map of current locations of interest. So these are exciting times indeed. Let's not forget that this year, also in Q1, basically the total leasing activity was almost 50% higher than last year. There is a baseline effect, of course, because last year was a more tougher period in the beginning of the year. But all in all, we have very good signs. And I think, coming back to your question, it's being absolutely driven by infrastructure projects.
Thank you, Muler. And the next question goes to Bogdan or Peri, who wants to take it. from a lawyer to another lawyer, how easy is to develop industrial outside Bucharest?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting topic. Our view on this is that, okay, there are maybe some impediments. For example, we still have an agri law which was enacted last year and which to some extent prevents the reclassification of agricultural land. So if you want to take now a new site that is in the outskirts of Bucharest and it's still does not have zoning, is classified as pure agricultural land for crops, it will be quite demanding to get the zoning now because we have this law. The law is under discussion. There are, of course, plans to, there are prospects, you know, to overturn it because it really blocks investment. Other challenges, so I fully agree with Muler that infrastructure is key here. And once we will see the new ring road, I think it will be a new boom in terms of you know, developments, industrial developments. What we see in terms of challenges and legal challenges as well are sometimes linked to infrastructure are utilities. Gas, for example, could be challenging, also because the government decided to not to charge fees for when you decide, you know, to install gas, and this to some extent block the market. But this is just temporary. We will overcome this. Access sometimes, you know, could be challenging. You need to build ring roads and some infrastructure in some sort of joint venture with the municipalities. And what is interesting, and maybe we will see for Bucharest, in the context where the city hall suspended the zoning for various sectors in Bucharest, for many of them, maybe they at some point they will consider, and definitely we are supporters of this, to consider reconverting some sites, maybe for logistics, maybe for in-city logistics, because it's still quite expensive, you know, to get it from private developers, you know, to buy land in Bucharest for logistics. But if municipality will reconvert some sites and will allocate them via concession or similar projects, it will be very interesting. But overall, that's it, and it's very interesting, and things are moving. Actually, I fully agree with Muler that things are moving. We see progress and we see very interesting trends here.
Thank you, Bogdan. Thank you. And now that we kind of have the general picture, let's get to the core of the issues. So again, the research data show us that we have a vacancy rate of 8% for Bucharest, and the effective rents remain stable at around 3.5 euro per square meter. But let's look beyond the rents. What incentives are developers offering? What else should matter for tenants? Muler, would you like to respond?
I mean, incentives always matter to everybody, and especially to tenants. That's always an interesting conversation to be had during negotiations. I mean, how should I start? I mean, there is a good story and a story regarding potential challenges. I mean, of course, the general message of this conversation is, you know, is very positive because the reality is very promising. And talking about, of course, it's not all well. You know, sometimes we have challenges like in all industries. So looking at right now as a snapshot at the picture, what I can say is that it's obvious that the costs are rising. The costs of construction are rising by a significant margin. This is something that is going on in other markets as well. It has to do with inflationary phenomena that is happening basically in big economies as well. However, we are experiencing this not necessarily for contracts that are now ongoing, for projects that are now being constructed, because these have been contracted roughly probably end of the year, I mean, you know, November, December last year. However, new projects do have this problem. So on one side, higher costs. On the other side, we have shorter terms, because one of the coming out hopefully of this difficult year that we all had, we see that tenants indeed are requesting more flexibility on everything, but especially on terms. So we do see shorter terms, we see higher costs, we see a potential inflationary environment that will take the famous 2% that we always speak about, we always expect in these contracts, because the target of the national banks is 2%, so on and so forth. We will probably see different numbers here, and this will mean real rent erosion. Also in build-to-suits contracts, so buildings that are built specifically for a tenant, especially a large tenant, we do see significant pressure on effective rents. So all this environment poses challenges to the idea of property values, because all developers, which are the guys that take things forward always, they take the risk, they invest, they take things forward. So developers are looking at challenges to property values. And on the other hand, of course, the tenants are interested in passing rent. This is everything. I mean, this is their main KPI. And in between, the market is created in between this tension between the two. And what can we do? I mean, we're looking at it, because when we go into a negotiation, then what happens is that the tenant says, in Romania, the classic book says that there should be 1 month of rent-free for 1 year of contract. Okay, so that is classic. But people who have special requests are not happy with the classic version. So in general, incentives are made up of rent-frees and or fit-out contributions, which is basically cash. These both lead to more erosion and pressure on rents and on values. One of the way to look at it, I mean, we're trying to find solutions. Of course, we're not going to make it to promote revolutions in real estate, because that's not going to happen. But one way to address this is something we've been talking also internally, has been happening in industrial markets, say in Poland, in Germany, in UK, for sure in the States, but that's very far away. And locally in Romania, on the office market, there have been several deals with this characteristic. Namely, basically, we're talking about a solution where we have the synthetic equity solution, whereby the tenant, instead of insisting on a lower rent, they can take a share of the profit of the development upon stabilization. It means when it is leased and constructed and the tenant is installed in the property, basically they can participate in the profit sharing of the project. It would seem, I mean, at first look, developers would not be happy with this approach, because it would attack the baseline of their discussion, but of their business, in fact. But what is happening, it is a win-win solution, because this applies to build-to-suit projects, and it does entice tenants to sign longer terms. So they would sign longer terms, more sustainable values. It is in the same time, paradoxically, is also greener. It's green because basically what it means, people would move less around. It means longer terms, less moving around, a greener solution for everybody. And it is a more sustainable business climate. So we'd like to promote this solution. So it's something that is relatively, say, new to the Romanian market, but we think that this has merits for both developers and tenants.
This is fantastic again. And from a lawyer to other lawyers, what would you say, Bogdan, how would you structure this type of structure or the incentives in general?
It's a very interesting, innovative approach for sure. And you know, to the extent you find a tenant and a developer that's interested in this, I guess a lot of questions to consider. If there's bank financing, the lender would have to be sure this is bankable to the extent that, I guess it would depend how you're getting the profit sharing out and at what moment. Certainly, of course, this can be taken into account in the term sheet stage, but because it's such a new project, we'll have to walk the banks through it. I guess, and I'm not familiar with this, so I'm speaking sort of you know, ad hoc. But I guess to the extent there are, you know, the casualty of the building, there's a damage, the building burns down. What happens? Does the tenant take the risk that the building isn't rebuilt? Does the tenant get a share of the insurance money? The extent the company that owns the property, it goes bankrupt, where does the tenant stand in terms of being able to get cash out of that process? Probably at the end of the line. I guess they're not secured, but something to think about how to structure this. You know, again, I'm just brainstorming here because this is sort of a kind of a new concept, but it would be an interesting thing to structure, and I think could be done, surely. And as Muler pointed out, it's done elsewhere, so why not here?
When we were preparing for the event yesterday, it's exactly what we've discussed with, I discussed with Muler, that you need to have the entire picture. So indeed, but it's wonderful to have this insight from you. But I also have a question, an ad hoc question for Muler. So, what's the difference between this structure and joint venture? Because for me as a lawyer, it looks like a joint venture, but I understand that it's definitely not from commercial perspective.
It's a good question, Gianina, and Bogdan and I were speaking about that as well. You know, we're not competition lawyers, but the idea that it could be recharacterized as a joint venture is something we'd have to look at. I guess the question may be of how much control the tenant has, or whether they're just getting an income stream. But I think holistically, it would have to be looked at from a competition perspective for sure.
I have a comparison here. I mean, there are company developers that actually use entirely investors' money. Not name one, but maybe you can think about a name.
Yes.
And they basically they have a promote, which is in effect the promote structure is in effect is a synthetic equity arrangement whereby the developers participate in the profit of the project. They take some fees going forward, but at the end of the project, they take a piece of the cake, so to speak. And the cake being total costs, total value minus total costs.
That's for resi, right, Muler, which is maybe a little different animal.
No, I was thinking, you know, it's an industrial. It's an.
Is it? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I think I know the resi example as well. So,
yeah.
Yes, we cannot name all the names, but I think this and one major difference between equity participation itself, which is the joint venture arrangement, is that this is off the books. Of course, the equity is on the books. I'm just trying to, and then this joint venture, indeed, the tenant takes all the risk that you've been talking about previously. They'll have to go through all the process. You know, they have to think they can take or not, development risk, construction risk, all sorts of, and that is why the easier way, including for developers, and you know, less billing times for lawyers, maybe.
Well, that's not good.
That's not good.
No, it's not. It's not. It's a structure that requires to be very well thought about.
Anyway, we don't think it's complicated. I mean, we're not trying to, you know, this is actually quite a simple exercise. The end of the, you know, the end of the, in the end, everybody gets what they want, because tenants get a participation in the profit, which is sizably more bigger than the reduction in rent they would get. And what the developers get, they get longer term leases with tenants that have, you know, they are incentivized to stay in the project. And these are arm's length transactions, because I've been with my colleagues in valuation. which is an important point of view. You know, the valuers, how would a valuer look at this? I mean, as long as it is arm's length and it is market rent, then it's fine. So yeah, it's.
Well, I think it's a great idea, but by throwing these ideas out, I hope it doesn't sound as if we're saying no, this can't be done. Quite the opposite. I mean, I think Bogdan and I in particular are never take the view that the answer is no. It's how do we find a way to make it work. So I think this is the way we would approach it.
I think it's a great. Please go, Bogdan, please.
We were just brainstorming, because of course Muler provoked us all, and we discussed this, and we said it could be also good news for banks, because you have a higher rent, which is some sort of guaranteed, and in exchange you have this structure, which again, as explained by Muler, it's not a joint venture with all let's say legal stuff and legal complications. It's a profit sharing structure which can be implemented. Not so easy. I mean, you need to structure it from a legal perspective. You need legal advice, but it's doable. It's doable. It's not rocket science. It's new, and you need to think out of the box indeed, because it's not the. And I agree with Muler that okay, right now what do we have on the market? We have rent reduction, we have rent free, we have contribution to tenant fit outs. Sometimes these are not each of them or all of them are not properly addressing the needs of developers currently, and you need to think out of the box, maybe implement this new concept.
I think Răzvan and Muler, maybe the perfect guinea pig for this is going to be that industrial platform that we're working on selling. I think that may be the best place to start. We should talk. Your colleague Mihai Papadopol is taking the lead on that, I think, but maybe we should have a chat.
Right, absolutely.
I would be very happy to hear that this would be implemented, because I think it's the dream of every transactional lawyer to have this structure implemented. It sounds wonderful. It's a creative way to expand the pie, actually. Mm-hmm. So before going to our, thank you so much. Before going to our closing question, I really would like to encourage people who are listening to us to raise any questions that they might have in the Q&A sections. We really want to hear your thoughts. And as we promised, we had an interesting topic. So I would really like to hear how you view this. Please raise your questions. So for all of you, we've discussed about demands, projects, construction, ways to structure it. Most probably this will be a record year for the industrial market. What are your predictions for the future? Who would like to
I can take this, Gianina, if I may. Definitely in terms of leasing. So the way we see the first Q and the way we see the interest in the market, we'll see a strong number of transactions. With the comment that we'll see lots of different transactions as well compared to last year. So I would not say only leasing, but we'll see land transactions as well. We'll see build-to-suits. So occupiers that would like to develop their own facility. It's happening a lot today as well, but it is a topic because money are cheap now in the market, and some occupiers prefer to develop their own thing. But my bet is on investment, and as Perry said, on platforms. So if you're looking at what's happening today, at what investors are interested today in Romania, is platforms. They're not interested to come and buy one asset here, maybe one asset there, and so on. Because we're talking about market in which the buyers are the big money, we need to talk about big numbers. Yeah, it's as simple as that. The only questions here is how many products will be out there. We have now 2 names that are coming up as local players. Maybe we'll see more. But this is what's very interesting for me today in the market.
Thank you, Răzvan.
I think, yeah, following up on Răzvan's thought, basically we have this local investors, local developers that have, some of them do have the ambition and the capability to create platform, in their platform developments with the, where they are present in several parts of the country. However, we also see interest from so-called aggregators, where we have an investment fund which thinks outside the box and wants, for example, to acquire urban logistic products in Bucharest and other big cities, which is a very interesting way to create this type of aggregation that is interesting basically for larger investors in the end. So we, in general, we think that this environment, which is currently dominated by very, how should I say, the large and very competent developers, dangerously competent, so to speak, we will probably see more fragmentation on the outskirts in regional cities and on products that are not of interest to the big guys, like, for example, urban logistics. But in the end, the secret, there is no other way. The secret lies in the power for the local developers and in general new developers, not necessarily local, to aggregate platforms and to have asset management that is integrated together with property management, either by themselves or by third-party companies that provide professional services. And they should package these products and take advantage of the sure-to-come yield compression, and then profit in the process. I mean, I think this is a trend inside new infrastructure and the revolutionary effect of A0. I think this is a new trend: aggregation of properties by investors and or developers.
Yeah. We've been speaking with a couple of large investors that are active in other parts of Europe that you would expect they should be here, and probably 2022, 2023 they will. Again, going back to Răzvan's issue, of course, there's not necessarily enough product on the market to buy, and that's kept them away. But with a number of these smaller developers, I mean, Aresa just jumped in to warehouse. Another developer that was previously doing this has told me they're getting back to developing a new product. We've had many inquiries for, and I know it's maybe slightly different, but I wanted to mention it, data centers. This, I think, because Romania has a low cost of energy, plenty of water, these are 2 of the main components of sourcing data centers. So we're still, Bogdan, I think, is still relatively optimistic that we'll see some major developments of data centers. What else? And then urban logistics, as was mentioned, we expect that will be something in the next, if not this year, then in the coming years. And finally, I would say CTP pioneered the way with their green bonds. This will have an impact on how warehouses and logistics and industrial are developed going forward. And I think it's a good thing. Bogdan?
Yeah, so as mentioned, I think indeed our bet, and we fully agree that 2021 will be a good year for logistics. What I just want to add is, in the context of the new ring road of Bucharest and the development of infrastructure, I also estimate that we will see projects like we have seen in the last years with the one roof platforms, with consolidation of the chain of retailers under under a single roof, and we will see this maybe also in other places, not only in Bucharest. Yes, I think we are positive, and let's see. And as Penny mentioned, we have been in discussions and with investors and maybe newcomers. We will see newcomers most likely next year. That's our bet, you know.
Well, the biggest news will be when your deal closes this summer, right? That will be a new investor.
Yeah, for sure.
But we can't name the name yet.
Yeah.
Thank you all. It looks
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
I can hardly wait to find the name.
Gianina, we should talk later.
I think I kind of know them, even from my past a bit. Okay.
Okay.
We have questions from the audience. Which industries are developing in this period except automotive? Which new industries not so developed previously are growing in this pandemic period? Who would like to answer that?
I mean, I can take it, but I don't have a definitive answer. I mean, I will approach a little bit from another direction. This is one of the things that is something that concerns us. And first, there is a lack of developers that do build to own in Romania. This is a very important trend because this is usually an important argument for medium production companies to come to Romania. Because if you have to buy the land yourselves, go through the ordeal of zoning and building it yourself, it's like some of you who built your house in Romania might remember that it's not the easiest process. Yeah. So it's a deterrent. So one, we think in order to have more production in Romania, more production facilities, we would need developers that do build to own. That's one point. For example, in the Q1 2021, the new leases that are signed, only 2% of these are production. This is not satisfactory by any stretch of the imagination. So this is something that we need to change. I mean, we as consultants, what we can do, we can smooth the process. I mean, we can offer, I mean, this is not an advertising exercise, but we can offer, the right land, the right constructor, the right technical team that can assist. But coming back to new industries, honestly, I haven't seen new industries. I mean, did you guys, anybody has some thoughts about this?
New, I mean, obviously retail has taken the lead in terms of all the home deliveries and eMag, I guess, is a good example, but not really an industry per se. Automotive, we mentioned, oil services. Not sure there's anything new.
I would add that everything that's related to agriculture will grow, and very recent, Muler, coming to our conversation from yesterday, chemical. Yeah, these are actual requests coming in, popping in, and we are interested in placing a manufacturing facility in Romania.
What about refrigeration and ambient space? I'm asking just because for example, vaccines. In order to handle them, and we'll have to handle them for years maybe. some of them require this, and I don't know if we have enough facility in Romania. It's just a question. I don't know. It come out. I don't know. Is this something that's maybe of interest?
I mean, I've been talking to a couple of developers, trying to convince them to build speculative deep freeze. Nobody's really enthusiastic about it. I mean, they liked it, but they need a tenant. Yeah. Because the risks here are very high. I mean, the construction cost is huge, and if it stays empty, then the effects can be, disastrous. So, yeah, I would say that the need exists. Indeed, there is a need, and I'm sure it will be met. But for the time being, I think we still have this mismatch between demand, because demand is fragmentary and small. I mean, if you put it together, then it's big, of course. But then what the developers need, they need big surfaces, long-term contracts with reputable tenants, and then there is this mismatch.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I'm still looking and hoping for other questions, but unfortunately, we don't have. So I think that
we've been comprehensive. So
it was really like an espresso and not a cappuccino, and this is what I really like. So or a grand latte, So this is exactly what I would like to achieve with these events, because as I've said, everybody, so the time is very limited and people are tired of Zoom. So on this note, thank you very much for this wonderful conversation. I really have some things to think about, and I really have, I think that everybody has now. So it has been wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye. Bye.